Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes. Hey, welcome to Win Wednesday. This is the Food Freedom Fertility podcast. You are, of course, here with your hosts, me, Sophia Pavia, and Caitlin Johnson, both registered dietitian nutritionists, both specializing in women's fertility. And we are here today with a guest named Kristen, who is going to share her story of using nutrition and lifestyle and maybe some other things to heal her fertility and go on to, I don't know, we'll have to listen to the story and hear what happens. So Kristen, thank you for coming on this episode, and we're pumped to hear your story.
Thanks so much for having me, Sophia and Caitlin. I'm so excited to share more about my story.
Yeah. This is so generous of you to come on here and, kind of share your signposts and share your experience of what you went through, what worked, what didn't work, what was hard, what was easy, so that the other gals who are still walking the path, or maybe you're still walking it too, but they're just a few steps behind you, can kind of see where you stepped so that they can walk behind you and not have to forge their own path entirely. So thank you for sharing.
Totally.
Could you just sort of zoom out, give us the bird's eye view of your fertility journey, how you found us, and sort of what went on for you? And then we'll dive in deeper and ask a lot more specific questions.
You got it. So my journey started, I guess, about 3 years ago at this point. And my husband and I had been trying for almost a year. And when you get to that year point, you start to just kind of be like, what's going on? Is there something wrong?
That's where it gets scary.
Yes. So I started to question, like, okay, I think I need to dive a little deeper. And it was on my mind all the time. All I was thinking about was my fertility journey. The beginning was so calm and so easy because I just was like, oh, I know it can take a full year to happen, And then
we're
really
just going to have so much sex and it's going to be so hot and so romantic. And then as the year rolls on, you start getting to be like, this isn't going so good.
Yeah, exactly. So I was at that point, and I had actually got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis right towards this tail end of the year of my journey. So that also made me start to be like, okay, I really need to look at my whole fertility picture if something is going on. And like I said, it was on my mind all the time. So I started on Instagram to try to find accounts that maybe I could relate to, learn something from. And Sophia, that's how I found you. You were linked to someone had put you up as like, oh, she has great fertility nutrition tips. So I went to your page and I literally think I watched most of the videos on your page, like everything that you had on there. I was like, oh, this is all such great information and little things that I can try now. For example, I started the liver cubes, which we can get into later too. But there was just little things I felt like I could throw into my everyday life that I wanted to try. And then you had so many great posts. I was like, I really want to give the course a try. And I did. So we can dive deeper in, but I wound up doing IVF and went through an IVF journey. My egg quality wasn't great due to my multiple sclerosis. So I wanted to fix it with nutrition, but also kind of follow what the doctors were saying. So it was twofold a little bit.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that. So first question, at what point in your journey did you start diving into the nutrition stuff? Was that before the IVF, after, during?
It was before.
Okay.
So when we started with the fertility specialist, she had said we could try IUI if we wanted to. I felt strongly about not doing a ton of IUIs. I felt like at that point I had been trying so much and was so disappointed so much of the time that if they felt IVF was a better route, I was willing to do that. Everything in my testing in the beginning had looked fine. They said that I had possible adhesions on my tubes, but that they couldn't confirm them, which was really frustrating. And so they said that because of that, IVF would be the best route. I wanted to give nutrition a try. I had always been very aware nutritionally, but I did have some bad habits. I was working out a lot. I was barely eating breakfast. Like there was little things that I didn't know that I should probably change until I came across your page, that I really started to fix right away when I saw your tips. And so I did that. We did wind up trying one IUI that didn't work. And then we started the IVF journey. And we had 2 rounds of IVF. I can get more in detail with that later. But I was really doing a lot of what was in the nutrition course for both rounds of IVF and in between as well.
I want to take a minute out of this episode and talk to you about our partner, Fertility Cloud. We decided to partner with Fertility Cloud this season because we have worked with women all over the nation, and we have heard the same issues arise again and again. My doctor can't see me for another 8 weeks. I had to wait 3 months to see a specialist, and even then, they didn't really tell me anything. Or there's no one in my small town that knows anything about my situation or can help me. And that's so common because unless you live in a major metropolitan area or a place that has grand medical universities, and honestly, sometimes even then it's still an issue, it's really hard to find fertility specialists who can give you tailored, customized help for your unique fertility situation. And that, my friend, is exactly what Fertility Cloud does for you. They offer everything you need, but right in your home because it's fully online. Another perk is they often have same day or next day appointments, so no waiting weeks and weeks and weeks in order to be seen by someone. And my favorite thing of all, really the pièce de résistance and the reason we are partnered with Fertility Cloud for this season, is they have a love and a passion for helping families grow. It is why they do what they do. It is why they wake up in the morning. It is why they have this world-class staff who cannot wait to step in and help you along your journey. So if this sounds like what you have been dreaming of, click the link in our show notes and go to fertilitycloud.com for $50 off your first visit. Yeah, so let's talk about 2 rounds of IVF. Why 2? Why not 1? Why not 4? Why the 2?
Yeah, so we did our first round, and I got 10 eggs on my retrieval day. And of those 10, only 1 was viable for a fresh transfer. The others were not, concluding that my egg quality was not great. The one that they were able to transfer, they said was okay quality. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. It was kind of in the middle. And I did get pregnant from that first transfer, but I wound up losing it really quickly. So when we did the second round, it was because we had nothing from the first. And so we wanted to keep going. We were on this journey. I had months in between to really focus on the nutrition, which I really think was so helpful because I went into the second round and we got 9 eggs that time. And 2 of them we were able to send out for testing. We did the PGTA testing that time, and both came back chromosomally normal. And we were able to save one of them and then do a frozen transfer, which wound up being my son.
Wow.
And I think we really had the change. Yeah, I really think the nutrition was the big change there in just like the constant tips I was doing every day that I got from your course.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad that I get to be a part of that story and that it was helpful for you. So for people listening, what were the tips? What were the top things that you were doing?
Yeah, so I think I started having breakfast, which was huge. And I was really focusing on getting a lot of choline, so having eggs. What I was doing previously was I was having protein shakes as my breakfast, but they were full of sugar and not a good breakfast. So that was a big change that I made right away. And I felt better throughout the day. So not only was it helping my fertility, but I was feeling better physically. So that was great. I changed up my exercise routine. So exercise does make me feel just good in general, which is why I think I was such a fiend of it. I would do an hour of exercise, sometimes an hour and a half, 6 to 7 times a week. I wasn't really taking rest days. And so I really changed that up because that is hard on your body, which I learned from your course. So I wound up doing more of like walks and hikes and things like that. And I cut the time and just kind of did it up till when I felt I needed to, like when I felt good. And I was like, okay, it's been a half hour, it's been 45 minutes. I wasn't so stuck on doing it for an hour or an hour and a half. And I used some weight training as well, but I really switched it up. I did some Pilates. So I think just not having, I was like hardcore running originally. I think that really changed just like kind of how my body was reacting to. I had cut like things like alcohol, been aware of caffeine previous to your course, but just like listening to some of the tips you had in there, and I think also too, you made it realistic for me. If you don't have to do this every single day, every minute of the day, all of the time, just the
Exactly.
consistency is key and try your best, right, to do it as much as you can. So I think that made it more attainable for me because I felt like, oh, if I had an ice cream that day, it was okay. I'm not having ice cream every single day, every meal of the day, you know?
That makes me feel really good because, having some disordered eating in my past and working with a lot of ladies that do, the last thing I want is for things to be more food anxiety, more
Yeah.
restriction, more, out of control feelings when you are presented with a treat or something
Yep.
that isn't like, on plan. And so that really
For
is
sure.
is awesome to hear. And listener, I hope that you understand that too, that like you can have your life. You can live your life. You might need
Hmm.
to modify your life. Like if your main fun time is like going out to happy hour where you're like eating fries and having four
Yeah.
beers and you do that 3 times a week, that's probably needs to change. And you need to lessen the frequency and then the amount that you're having and maybe change up that order when you're at happy hour to where you're getting something a little more fertility friendly, whatever, whatever. But it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you don't get to go out and watch the hockey game with your friends and family because oh, you need to like eat your special food and sit in your house meditating, and you live your life. You can't shrink your life into where all you are is someone trying to get pregnant, because it's isolating and it's sad. And for some of us, like
Yeah.
Kristen here, if she had to do that for 1 month, like it was just like, okay, you just gotta dial it in as hard as you can for 1 month, and then you're gonna get pregnant with your healthy baby, like, fine, who cares? Like, I do that, no problem. But when it's an uncertain duration with an uncertain result, we can't guarantee that this is absolutely going to be the thing. Sometimes you can do all the things and still have problems. You gotta live life.
It's so true.
And I really hope that that's what people are hearing now through your story.
Yeah, and I have to say I went like hard in the beginning. Like I like you said, like I was like, okay, I just have to focus on doing all of these things all of the time. And then once I was going through your course, I was like, okay, wait, like I can really like live life like you said. So that
Hmm.
was like a huge mind shift for me that was really helpful. And had started therapy at the time just because it was a lot to just kind of absorb that I found out I
Hmm.
had multiple sclerosis and that I had infertility pretty much within like 2 months of each other. It was a lot to just
Yeah.
wrap my head around. And I have to say that like I told her, I'm taking this course and this is what I'm learning from it. And she was like, you have to remember that each day is like, yes, this is a hard journey. It can be really long, but like you have to hold on to the snippets to keep it as much of real life as you can, So that was
Yeah.
really important for my mindset.
Was there any difference in round one and round two? I was just looking at the notes and it looks like you did a frozen transfer, not a fresh
Yes.
transfer in round two. Did they switch up the protocol very greatly and even just what they were doing before retrieval to try to impact egg quality? Or was really like the main differences just focusing a little bit more on the nutrition and having that time and recovery between transfers?
Yes. So since I went through round one, they said they were going to up my protocol a little bit because I was more of a low responder. So they did do that, and they threw in an extra medication, which I think might have been helpful as well. But
Lupron?
they don't talk about the nutrition, like no, I think it was like growth hormone that they had given me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is supposed to impact egg quality. And so that made a big difference too. But I really think that it was the nutrition. They don't talk about nutrition, the fertility doctors. So I felt like I was getting such different information from like your course that I wasn't getting from them. And if I would ask them like, oh, I'm doing this nutritionally, do you think that there's anything else I should be doing? They'd be like, no, like you can eat normal, you can do whatever, like I would try to ask for advice and they wouldn't really give me much. So I felt like I had that side from you, Caitlin.
Welcome to our personal hell. This is what we're up against all the time, from clinics, from doctors, and honestly from TTC veterans. Like there isn't a day that goes by that, I don't know if Caitlin gets this as well, but like I'll put up something about like toxin exposure or I don't know, anything. And I'll be like, hey, seed oils or something like that. And people are like, this is spreading dangerous misinformation. I did 5 rounds of IVF and my doctor never told me any of this. And he said it is safe to do all of these things. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that's why you had to do 5 rounds there, sister. But, they're looking through a very narrow lens and like, okay, is this food that you're eating going to like directly interact with your medications? Is it going to like cause some kind of problem that's going to make us not be able to do the retrieval? And if the answer is no to both those things, they're kind of like, whatever, we'll just do another round and another round and another round and another round until we get the result that you need. Versus, let's make this round count and like really, really work on getting your body as healthy as possible to where, and you see this ton in PCOS, is like, we need your body to actually respond to these medications. And if you have just these extremely stimulated ovaries already because you have untreated PCOS, it's just going buck wild and your ovaries are like freaking out all the time. And we just have to keep giving you more drugs and more drugs and more drugs to try to get a response out of this ovary. If we're going to do this route, let's manage some of this stimulation of the PCOS ovary and to where these medications can actually work. Because I see in working with women, especially with PCOS, that like we have to get the insulin resistance under control. We have to get the androgens under control. We got to do some of the things to help the ovary kind of like reach a state of normal before all of these stim meds are added on to do IVF. Otherwise, I mean, I have had ladies that have done many, many, many rounds, never a viable egg. It never works because their ovary is like so overstressed. And meanwhile, nutrition and lifestyle can make an extreme difference.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. We're so glad that you're here, and we want to take a moment and share with you about one of our sponsors, Fullwell. Fullwell is a reproductive health company that offers superior nutritional supplements made without any compromise to support women and men throughout the reproductive journey. And today, I want to take a minute and tell you a little bit about one of their products called Iron Bump. Iron Bump is a favorite product of mine because not everybody needs iron support while they're trying to conceive, while they're pregnant. And because of this, I tend to recommend really high quality prenatals that don't have iron in them. But there are instances where you want some iron. When you're in one of those instances, this is a great product to turn to. And let me tell you why. This iron product contains ferrous biglycinate. It's a better option than most of the conventionally used iron salts, as it's been shown to be at least 2-fold higher bioavailability and absorption and has less digestive side effects. This product also is combined with some other supports that make it really helpful when you're taking iron. Many people, when they take iron, have digestive side effects, and part of that comes because it's a harder thing to digest. And Fullwell covered for that. They included in the supplement acerola cherry, which is a rich source of vitamin C. For iron to be absorbed properly, it needs an acidic environment in the GI tract to do that. And vitamin C helps create this environment. Fullwell's put a lot of thought into this digestive comfort blend so you absorb what you need and have a comfortable time doing that. So head over to fullwellfertility.com and use the code FFF20 for 20% off your first order. And now back to our episode.
I think too, I stopped like overbooking myself again from like just hearing about your lifestyle tips. Like I was the person who was like trying to go to this plan, this plan, this plan all weekend long and just kind of like always on the go. And so I
Mm-hmm.
started to just kind of like let myself relax a little bit. And I feel like that was also a big change for me too.
Kristen, when you moved on from kind of trying naturally to starting to work with a reproductive endocrinologist or fertility clinic, were you specifically looking for someone, or was this kind of like part of your interview process of clinics that had experience working with somebody with a multiple sclerosis diagnosis?
Yes, that was a big
Yeah.
part of it. And the clinic that I went with had a few, not very many, but she had a few at least, whereas others they hadn't had any. So that made me a little bit weary.
It's
Yeah,
usually
I
people
know.
get diagnosed are like postmenopausal, and so they're not at the fertility clinic.
Yeah,
It's rare to be as young and
right,
healthy as you and have an MS diagnosis to start with, let alone being trying to build your family.
for sure. It's definitely different. And I was already, like I said, like I was living what I thought was pretty much a healthy lifestyle. I ate relatively healthy. I exercised, I thought I was doing all the right things. But I feel like, Sophia, what you taught me is that it goes even deeper than that. And so, like, that's with the MS too. So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Because they said, like, you should really be focusing on your nutrition, which I thought I had been. So I was like, oh, I do. But
And you
I
were just
realized,
not
like,
for
there's so
that
much
goal.
more.
It's so much of it is
Yeah.
like we can't be eating and exercising like we're 16 and in a high school sport anymore. We can't be having a protein shake and calling that a healthy meal. And listen, a protein shake can
No.
have its place. Sometimes it's the difference between
Yes.
eating and not eating. Sometimes it keeps you out of the drive-through line. A protein shake can have its place. But thinking that that's like a healthy breakfast, that's like as good as it gets. No, we got to shift our mentality. Our nutrition needs change as our life cycle changes. Not life cycle, like we're like
Yes.
going to have multiple life cycles. One
Butterfly,
life cycle, but phase in the life cycle.
for sure. And I think too, you had talked about like looking at vitamin D and things like that. And that wound up being something I was low in due to my MS too. So I started taking vitamin D. But again, like you had kind of alerted me to asking, like I advocated for that. Like, can you check my vitamin D
Awesome.
levels? And then sure enough, they were low. So I feel like I kind of like knew what to ask for thanks to some of the tips in your course too.
When you kind of moved from the fresh transfer to the frozen transfer, what did that kind of change in your mindset, or did you do anything to prepare for a frozen transfer? Just kind of want to give people who may be being offered choices a little context into what is different between them and maybe benefits and drawbacks based on how the protocol looks different, and maybe what was offered to you, if you have kind of thoughts and insight in that.
Definitely. So I wasn't really given much information my first round. They had said like, oh, if you have an egg, you can do a fresh transfer and just do that. It'll be faster. And I should have asked more. Like I should have said, well, why? And what's the difference if I do a frozen transfer? And I knew that the testing was different, but I didn't realize that if you're not testing the embryos, there's just a lot more risk and it's a lot less likely to work. And I think with IVF, so many people think, oh, it's going to work right away. You're doing IVF, which is so not the case. IVF works 50% of the time, which is such a crazy statistic. But if you're able
50% of the
to
time
do the
per
frozen,
retrieval, not per transfer. And
yeah,
that's
yeah,
it's actually not even 50%. It's more
it's
like
mind blowing.
42% per retrieval.
Really has it changed?
So, well, I don't know. It depends on who
Crazy.
you're asking, I guess. But
That was something I
um,
didn't know.
yeah, not a lot of people do.
No. So when I had said to them, I want to test the embryos if we're going to do another round, this was when we had just done the fresh transfer, but I just wasn't feeling right about it. Like I just had a weird feeling kind of the whole go. The whole thing just didn't feel right to me. So I started asking questions at that point, and I said, if we do another round, what does it mean if I do a frozen transfer? And they said, oh, well, you can test the embryos to see if they're chromosomally normal. And that will take out a huge, risk of miscarriage. That's, I guess, the main risk, or the main reason people miscarry is due to it not being chromosomally normal. And I guess once you're past 30, this is more likely to occur, which I also didn't know. I mean, I was 30 at the time exactly, but still, it's just more likely. So then when we tested the embryos and we were able to kind of have like a whole write-up about them, they grade them just like they do with the fresh transfer. I just felt better. And I felt also too, like after the retrieval, your body goes through so much, like you said, Sophia, like my ovaries were just like my whole body just felt it, and I felt like with the frozen transfer, I could recover a little bit because I didn't have the transfer right away. Whereas with the fresh transfer, like 4 days later, 5 days later, you're there and you're getting it transferred right away. So I think for my body to heal in between was a really big difference too. So if someone were to ask me, I would say I would recommend doing the frozen transfer if you can.
I think that you have a really beautiful example of advocating for yourself in this process, especially kind of between scenario 1 and scenario 2, where it's like, wow, maybe I should have asked more questions. And so I'm going to, and I applaud you for that. I think that that's really beautiful. I think that people listening to this might even be in a better position to advocate for themselves because of what you shared. And that's a really powerful gift to give someone.
For sure.
I wonder, one question I have, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, or even if you don't know, but did you go to a clinic that was private, or was it associated with like a research hospital or university, or
it was associated with a hospital, with a research hospital? Yes.
A research hospital.
Yeah.
We've just been having a handful of gals doing that, and it seems like they are having good outcomes.
That's good.
Well, here's a question. So let's talk about MS in pregnancy, in birth, in motherhood. How much did this diagnosis factor in? I mean, even in trying to conceive, like when it came to like the IVF protocol or in becoming pregnant, and like what kinds of concerns did you have, and how did that sort of play out through your pregnancy, birth, and now that you're a mom?
For sure. So the first thing I asked when I found out that I had MS was, am I still going to be able to be a mom? I felt like from the beginning, I was meant to be a mom. Like more than anything, I feel like I had dreamed of being a mom since I was little. So that was the number one thing that I asked the day that I got diagnosed. And they assured me, yes, so many mothers go on to be mothers with multiple sclerosis. It's still possible. It might be a little bit more of a challenging journey, but I think hearing those words, like I just needed to know that it wasn't going to be completely stripped from me. And I started at that point already questioning, is something going on? Because we were at that end of the year of trying anyway. So I think if anything, it kind of pushed me to start to ask my doctors, like, my OBGYN, what do I do next? This is not happening for me. And now I know that I have multiple sclerosis. So what do I do? And I have a minor case of it. So it's kind of crazy because the way that I found out was I got the COVID vaccine and I had a flare up from getting the COVID vaccine for the first time. So I had double vision.
Wait, are you saying that vaccine has risks?
Steroids.
You're canceled. Get off our show.
Not saying that, just my body. I didn't get multiple sclerosis from the vaccine, to be clear, but it caused it to come out and it caused me to have a flare-up.
People would think that you said that too. That's the really sad part.
Right? I know. That's why I need to be clear. It caused me to have a flare up. So was I scared? Yes. Was I shocked? Yes. Was I regretting it? Maybe. But I was also grateful that I found out, and that I could go into pregnancy and my pregnancy journey knowing this information for me was really powerful. So I do feel blessed that I was able to know. But I was considered high risk for multiple reasons. I was considered high risk because of multiple sclerosis. I was considered high risk because of IVF. So I had to see, a maternal fetal medicine doctor who has seen, again, pregnancy with IVF and multiple sclerosis, which was great to have, on my side. But I feel like there were so many extra steps because of the diagnosis.
Yeah. Did you have to take like additional medications? Did you maybe have to come off of medications that were helping you with your MS symptoms? What went on with that?
Yes. So they had told me the risks of being pregnant while on the medication. And I felt really strongly I was already going to be on so many medications from IVF. I didn't want to be doing both medications at the same time. So they had said, okay, while you're trying to grow your family, stay off the medications once you get pregnant, and then let's deal with it afterwards and see kind of where you're at. I was going for every 6-month MRIs at that point, just to kind of watch the disease, see if it's getting worse. So they were monitoring me in both states. And I was staying pretty regular. So they had said like, okay, we understand and that's fine. And if there's a change, if you're having multiple flare-ups, we can always revisit, but let's try it without the MS medications for now. So that's what I did. And I focused on the IVF medications. I am someone who doesn't like to take Tylenol. So for me, the IVF medications were a big deal, as were multiple sclerosis medications too. So that was almost the hardest part to wrap my brain around was I don't want to put all of these things in my body. So how am I going to like detox while being on
like, here's this baby that I'm trying so hard to have, and now I'm going to be like putting it at risk with these medicines. That's such a hard pill to swallow. Pun intended.
Big time. It really is. Agreed.
So coming off of that medicine, did you have more like symptoms or anything? Like, how were you feeling?
I wasn't
when
feeling
you came
great.
off MS medicine?
I wasn't feeling great. But then I didn't know if it was that or if it was like
hormones,
all the fertility
shots.
It's so hard to know, and I remember it was my 30, I was about to be 31 and I was doing IVF round 2 shots. And I was like, this is a different type of shot for my birthday. Like I'm used to birthday shots at the bar, and here I am doing my IVF shots for my 31st birthday. So such a mind shift, Yeah. But in a good way. I enjoy a mocktail now way more than I ever knew that I could. They're actually what I prefer to drink all the time. So it's funny how things change in every realm as you get older and as you go through different paths of life, like fertility.
So you had a little boy.
Yes. Brooks.
Amazing. Brooks.
Yes. He's 15 months old.
What was your labor and delivery like?
So at the end of my pregnancy, I wound up having really high blood pressure, which I had throughout my whole pregnancy. So they were monitoring me again, even extra, more closely for that. I was going pretty much every 2-3 days at the end of my pregnancy. And so I wound up getting induced because, what is it called when you have high blood pressure?
Preeclampsia?
Yes,
HELLP
I
syndrome?
wound up having preeclampsia. Preeclampsia. I was just blanking on the word, but yes. So I got induced at 37 weeks and I had a really long labor and delivery. So I went in on a Sunday and they started to induce me that night, and I didn't have my son till Wednesday morning.
Wow.
That is a long time.
It was really long. I didn't respond. I was like barely, I think I was half a centimeter dilated when I got there. They gave me the balloon. Then I was like a 1 centimeter dilated, so they had to try other things. I was on Pitocin. It was so many things. But all in all, I was able to have him naturally, which was a really big thing for me.
We're taking a quick break from this episode to talk to you about one of our sponsors, NutriSense. NutriSense is sort of a one-stop shop blood sugar nutrition solution that works to help you understand the way foods impact your individual body. So when you use NutriSense, you get a continuous glucose monitor, which helps you see the way that food impacts your blood sugar both immediately and over time. And you get access to a credentialed nutritionist to help you understand these numbers and apply new strategies to your life to help you be your most fertile self while taking care of your body nutritionally. Using a continuous glucose monitor was a game changer for me when I was about 6 months postpartum, and it seemed like my body was just responding differently to the foods that I had sort of always been eating. So NutriSense sent me one of these continuous glucose monitors. I wore it for 2 weeks and was absolutely blown away at the data that I found. Some foods that I thought were great and healthy and doing wonderful things for my body were actually causing huge shifts in blood sugar that were causing me to have all kinds of issues like anxiety and insomnia and just exacerbating some of the things I was experiencing postpartum. And working with NutriSense helped me not only understand what was going on, but have a plan on how to change the way that I was eating to better support my body in this new situation. Using a continuous glucose monitor for you can really be a game changer in your fertility journey. I mean, imagine having real-time insights on how your body responds to different foods, activities, sleep, stress, all the things that we're constantly harping on this podcast. This can help you make smarter food choices, stay motivated, and understanding your body's unique needs better. So head on over to nutrisense.io/FFF and use the code FFF50 to get $50 off your first month with NutriSense.
Oh no, I wound up taking an epidural. I did.
Okay. So vaginally.
But much later on. Yes.
Okay.
Vaginally. Exactly.
I was gonna say,
yes.
dang, Gina.
Vaginally. Yes. Oh my gosh, no. I had nothing to prove. And at that point, it was so long that I needed to do an epidural. But yes.
Yeah, sometimes they can be helpful for people to have some rest in between, especially when you're on Pitocin.
Yeah. At that point, I was on these medications, for the induction, which I wasn't happy about, but I was like, I want him out safely. This is a risk for me. So I just kind of let the process happen at that point. But that was also something I had to let go in the moment. It was not easy.
Did you have magnesium to control your blood pressure?
No. So they had thought about it, and luckily I did not. They put me on a medication for it, though, that last week that my blood pressure was high. So I think that was the reason I didn't need it. But I've heard crazy stories from the magnesium.
It's nice that you didn't need it. Mm-hmm. And Brooks came, and
he did.
So is he about a year old then?
He's 15 months.
15 months.
15 months. Wow.
Yeah.
So sweet.
So what does this look like moving forward for you now?
Yeah. So I would love to start for round 2 because we would love, if we can, to have another child. We have one embryo that's still frozen from that second round. So really hopeful that works. And I've been just trying to kind of start, not that I really ever dropped it, but really be great again about all of my nutritional choices to prep my body. In postpartum, I had a little bit of a curveball, I guess. I got hyperthyroid, I got thyroiditis, which caused me to show as a hyperthyroid state. And so I've been dealing with that and kind of just trying to fix my thyroid levels. And they're so much better than they were a few months ago, but it's crazy that your thyroid can really affect so much too. I was feeling so many symptoms.
Yeah, and postpartum is a tough time on your thyroid. That's a really common time for thyroid issues to sort of rear their
That's what they said. Yeah. And I guess with having multiple sclerosis, you're even more likely to have or be more susceptible to something with your thyroid. So I don't want to rush anything, and I want to be in the right place mentally, physically, nutritionally. So I'm kind of just still working on myself to hopefully eventually have a second. But honestly, if Brooks is my only, I would be just happy.
It's triumphant and beautiful.
Yeah. He made me
so do you think if a transfer didn't result in a baby, kind of like crystal ball, you don't think you'd push too much harder? Or
I think I would try again with IVF. I can't say that I'm going to do, I know I have some friends who have done 10, 11 rounds. I can't say that I would do that many. I don't think I would make it mentally, to be honest. But I think I have a few more rounds if need be. I guess I need to really play it by ear and listen to, my heart, my mind, all of the things, which I'm getting better at day by day, but not easy.
Yeah. It's not easy. That's a lot to manage. I had a really dear friend, had a baby and postpartum got diagnosed with MS, similar age as you. I think they're getting a little bit better actually at diagnosing it. And I wonder if that's partly why we're seeing it in younger women.
Could be.
But she had been through she was a nurse in Washington, D.C. and had been in a active shooter situation at a hospital. The shooter was in her, with her and her patient in her room. Obviously she survived, the patient survived, but it was a really, traumatic thing that she had to leave nursing even. And then a year and a half later, this came up. And I think a lot of times with autoimmune and other very I don't know. Trauma can just set off so much.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
whether it's a
And
medical
whether
trauma,
it's-
like having a vaccine,
Yeah, that's
or
exactly
whether
what I was
it's
gonna say.
something, an experience like that, like trauma can start a cascade of things. And so you probably know this already. You've been to therapy and maybe you've read good books. You've been in our community and listening to Sophia, but just as much as nutrition is important, that mental health side of like really taking care of yourself and building those self-care practices, not like let's go get my nails done and do bougie spa days.
Yeah, but like actually
reading,
doing
praying,
the self-care.
journaling, walking. Yeah, like doing the things that really pour into your reserves. I can imagine, a lot of times Sophia will make this analogy of like the fragile flower that just needs a little extra this or that, but like
Not
kind
fragile,
of if we all start
exotic.
treating ourselves in that way.
Exotic and beautiful flower. Because you are certainly not fragile, Kristen. You are tough as shit.
No, you're not fragile. No, but like the calla lily that if like you touch it wrong, it doesn't do the thing,
vanilla,
right? Like
Madagascar vanilla orchid. Very, very beautiful.
so what I'm saying is
Love that.
you like really approaching yourself as, let me create safety around my body in all the ways that I have control over, which is really hard to do when you have a toddler. Really hard to do.
Agree.
And building in like what you had to do when you were trying to conceive and saying no to plans and building space, and like it almost becomes more important because life can get so busy, especially if there's work on top of a toddler plus family plus you don't have to be reclusive, but even at the events and the things, like who am I surrounding myself with?
So
And
true.
what do
yeah,
I
am I
let
going to
them
stand
talk
in
to
this
me about?
gossiping, complaining circle and just let these energy vampires suck me dry? Or am I going to say, well, good to hear your family's doing better. Okay, let's talk to you soon. And then, loop around and find somebody that wants to talk about something that's a little more life-giving.
So my most favorite character in this Bridgerton series, I don't know if you guys watch it, but I just love it.
I don't, but everybody else does.
Eloise, this character is like, she's kind of maybe the tomboy, but not really tomboy. She just doesn't like to be in the dresses and doesn't like all the things. And she's in this conversation with all these debutantes that are like trying to find their husbands, and they're talking about their cross stitching, and they're like, Eloise, what's your favorite stitch? And she's like, the shift stitch. And they're like, what is the shift stitch? She's like, it's the shift in this it's the shift to get this conversation on something other than embroidery. And I loved that because it was like, it made me think of so many conversations I've been in where it's like, I don't need to be here and talking about this. So I'm going to try and change the conversation. If I can't change it and I can't make this positive and good in some way, I'm just out because I don't have the energy or the time for that. Like, let me build you up or you build me up, or let's talk about something we both love, or let's just not.
I agree.
It's true.
I feel like time is so precious, and it's so, especially now that I have a toddler, I feel like it goes so fast, and like I'm not willing to sit through those conversations like I used to be, and that's another thing that I feel like I've changed in. But you're right, like that's important for your self-care, and I feel like I've learned that too. Is like you need to prioritize, better, more positive environments in that kind of situation. And I love that episode too, Caitlin. So I agree with you.
I guess I
Eloise
gotta
is great.
start
I
watching
can't wait.
Bridgerton.
I can't wait for the second drop
You should,
of it.
Sophia. It's really good.
It's so good. I think I might start reading the books. I wish that I had kind of done it the other way. I didn't know it was
I
a
thought
book
about
series.
that too.
Kristen, let's do a book club.
I'm down.
That'd be so fun.
That'd be so fun.
Virtual book club.
Love that idea.
Yeah, that's what we need. More time on a virtual call.
Right? We have all the time for it.
Kristen, what has been the most surprising thing about being a mom? What's been delightful that you didn't expect, or what's been hard that you thought would be easy, or just something that stands out to you as surprising about the whole adventure?
I think the most surprising is that I could be having a day. I could be really just like at my wit's end, overwhelmed with my to-do list, the never-ending to-do list. And then I look at my son and it all kind of goes away. And I feel like that feeling of like I could feel the most stressed ever, I could be the most upset or just, nervous or whatever about so many things. And the way that he just kind of makes me always come back to that love and joy, for me has been just the most best and exciting and surprising part. I'm just like, I miss him when he goes to bed.
So
I love
true.
that time too, but
And he can even be the one that's like causing your hell.
Oh yeah.
Like don't dump it out, and then like, and you're like,
yep.
And like having to deal with it, and then he like does something cute and sweet, and you're like, you got me.
Yep. It's so true.
Kristen,
Yes.
It's partly because I'm about to ask you a faith question. Do you have any kind of like spirituality or faith that was a part of your journey that helped you get to where you are?
Yeah. So I have grown up Catholic, and I have been a very devout Catholic, I would say, my whole life. I went to Catholic school. My father is a deacon in the Catholic Church. And so I was very weary of IVF because it kind of goes against a lot of things. And so I had to kind of have it make sense for me. And I almost feel like having the slim amount of eggs that I had, I kind of turned it around and said, you know what? I felt so funny about having so many, like there were so many things that I was worried about. And so I feel like this was meant for me, like I was hoping to have 2 kids and now I had the 2 possibly. So I feel like I was able to kind of just look at it a little bit different. And I use the mantra my whole journey, faith over fear, the whole time. And I would, like pray extra and listen to certain songs that would help me, which I feel like really got me through some of the hard times. So I have to say, I feel like that really got me through some of the hard parts too.
Did you listen to the episode we released this past season? Ashton, I think.
Yeah, Resilient Mama Fitness.
Is her name, that does Resilient Mama Fitness.
I don't think I did.
You should go listen to that episode. I think it would really bless you.
She was also brought up devout Catholic going through IVF.
Was very resistant to IVF, family things that were holding her back. And one thing that she said that really, I mean, it's like I could say it and I'll probably start crying. It really stuck with me because Sophia and I publicly do not really talk about some of these things.
Yeah.
Listen to the troll comments from earlier. Like
we try not to like define who's going to hell and like tell them the reasons why that's happening to them, and topics like that are a real wet blanket on a conversation.
Yeah, and we've had guests who, they don't practice in a way that would include IVF, but they have a lot to add to the conversation and have a lot of skills that need to be shared, and that totally. It's like we're not trying to pick a side or anything, but
for sure.
What Ashton said that like really I'm thinking of it in this moment, and then I have one more thing to say and we probably should wrap up this episode, but she said, I just got to the point where I realized, like, I think this was after she had maybe her first or second. Like, if I end up going to hell, like I'm standing at the gates of heaven and God's like, or St. Peter or whatever she said, is like, you can't come in because you did IVF. And I'm looking at this son of mine that I got through IVF. Like, if then I don't want to go. Like, it was like,
so
when it's like, how God couldn't love this child that I have, or that people, it's just like, it doesn't. Anyway, I'm not quoting her perfectly, but I think you would probably be really encouraged by that episode. Also, as somebody that has been very loving of exercise and stuff, she's got a lot of beautiful things to say about that. The other thing I wanted to say was based on what you said, that your son brings you so much joy and he can kind of like really strip you of the cares and the anxieties, is at church a couple weekends ago, our pastor talked about the characteristic of God that is joy. And he talked about how we often highlight other characteristics of God, but that God is a joyful God. And he read from the book of Nehemiah, where they like find the scriptures again and are bringing the law to the people again. And Ezra says, let the people like feel bad that they haven't been doing the law and they want to go do all these sacrifices and all these things. And Ezra says, like, what God wants isn't the burnt offerings and the sacrifices and these things. Like, he wants you to come to him with a heart that's pure, essentially. And he says, let the joy of the Lord be your strength. And I've heard a song about that my whole life. Sophia could probably sing it with me right now.
My mouth is filled with laughing.
Like, I've read these scriptures. Totally.
That's
the joy of the Lord be your strength. Anyway, I never thought about truly letting God's joy be my strength. And I think that there's something really beautiful you shared about how your son brought this joy in you. But that joy you had and you showing up as that joyful mother is something that he really needs, and it's like kind of like a very beautiful cycle. And I think maybe there's a way that we can, when I'm a joyous mother or I'm a cranky mother, it affects the whole house, right? Like, and you don't have to be joyful all the time when you're not,
for sure,
but you know what I mean? Like, it's just like coming and showing up that way is it's so much for your children, and it's so beautiful that he can draw that out of you.
Thank you. I really love that.
Meditate
connection.
on that.
Yeah.
Let the joy of the Lord be your strength.
Caitlin's always so good at bringing it back to like the most important thing. It's great. I'm good at bursting out in a song from our childhood. She's good at saying important things.
Kristen, you have earned a Yeah Girl. You are on the podcast. We have gotten to the segment. Is there something you want to celebrate today?
I think I just want to celebrate consistency, honestly, like sticking with it. I feel like there were so many times where I didn't know if I could keep going, and things like little videos, Sophia, that are so silly that you would put up that would make me smile that day, to like a little tip here and there. Like, you kind of got me through in some of those really hard moments. So
bless you.
Thank you for the push and the consistency. And I still carry them into days like motherhood and things with motherhood. So thank you. And just life. It's true.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah,
I'm
girl.
honored.
Yeah.
Yeah, girl. Hey, it's me again, Sophia Pavia, registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in women's health, fertility, and optimal progesterone production. And I'm interrupting an episode of my own podcast to tell you about my online course called Ovulation Unlocked. So if you've been listening to our podcast episodes, you've probably heard a lot of things about basal body temperature, cervical mucus, cervical position, and tracking your fertility. Well, I have designed a 90-minute self-paced online course, which I titled Ovulation Unlocked, that puts all of that together and teaches you how to be the expert on your own fertility from home. This course is designed to put you in the driver's seat of your own fertility, not only so you can know what's going on with your body on any given day, but so that if you need medical help, you can show up to the appointment informed and ready to communicate. Too frequently, us women show up to our doctor's appointments and just say something like, I want to have a baby. And the doctor looks at you and says, good for you. Stop using birth control, start taking a prenatal, come back in a year if you're not pregnant. And that's all we get. However, Ovulation Unlocked puts you in the driver's seat, puts you in control of your fertility, to where if you need help, you can show up to that appointment informed and ready to communicate your needs. So if you want to become the expert on your own body and your own fertility, head on over to my Instagram bio and tap the Ovulation Unlocked link today. My yeah girls, I'm gonna
do we want to do a quick one?
Yeah, I can do a yeah girl. I am going to go have lunch with a friend of the pod, the Whiskey Nomad. She came on here to talk about mocktails and shift work and stuff like that.
So
and
fun.
she lent me a bunch of clothes for this video shoot thing that I was doing, and I ended up not needing to wear any of them because there was like a stylist there that had a bunch of clothes for me to wear. But she lent me all these really fancy clothes. She's very fancy. And she lent me all this fancy stuff, like this one shirt. I was like, ooh, I like this. Okay, I think I should tuck it in though. She's like, be careful tucking it in. That's real silk. It was $300. And I was like, yikes, get this off of me. I'm scared. I don't want to wear this shirt. It scares me. And so I'm going to take her out to lunch for loaning me her clothes and also return them, thank God, because I'm like, they're in this closet in my house that every time my kids go near it, I'm like, no, don't go in there. You're going to bankrupt us if you open that door. So lunch with a friend amazing. And a generous friend who lent me the fanciest of clothes.
Okay, my yeah girl is that I went into Aldi's today with three children. I really get kind of overwhelmed. I know that's kind of funny, but like, I'm not the best bargain shopper, and I don't know. Trader Joe's I can do with my eyes closed. Aldi's is hard for me. And today I did so well at Aldi's, and I got so many things, and I'm making food for new mamas in our church. One I'm doing bierox for, and one I'm doing like this slow cooked pork butt black bean Cuban situation.
What is bierox?
Bierox. Oh yeah, you missed it while you're making the bed.
Yeah, that's
bierox
what I said.
are basically like the German empanada, pasty, calzone. It's like the German form of a stuffed something.
Got it. Yeah.
So it's with cabbage and ground beef, and it's basically in like a dinner roll type dough. And so I'm like, get to spend most of the day in the kitchen, but also like I did so much shopping for not very much. And even though I get overwhelmed in there, I did it. I did it.
Yeah,
and I found things that were worth buying.
Woohoo!
That felt like a big yeah girl. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, Kristen, this has been another episode. We are so thankful for you. I think this will be a very listened to episode just based on SEO. There's probably not a lot of resources on multiple sclerosis in fertility, pregnancy, motherhood. As soon as we start typing in these words, people are going to find it and be so helped. So I just want to give you a proactive thank you for being so generous with your story.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's Sophia. If you love the show and want to continue your health and fertility journey using our resources, head on over to foodfreedomfertility.com for show notes, links to products and services, information about our guests, and our newsletter. Again, that's foodfreedomfertility.com. Thanks for listening.